Welcome to episode 3 of the Drive with Passion podcast. This podcast is all about the different facets of automotive enthusiasm, and this week we're going to talk about car companies that are soaring, that are doing amazing things, and what it is that allows them to do that. But we're also going to talk about those car companies that are sinking, that are failing, and what it is that has put them in the hole that they're in today. We're going to talk to Benny Kirk and Michael Van Runkel from hotcars.com. I've been working with both of these guys for a while, and they have some incredible insider information on both subjects. Before we dive in, please keep in mind that if you're listening to this podcast on your favorite platform, full video versions can be found at YouTube after searching for Rivers Cars, all one word. And with that, let's begin the episode. So, welcome to both of you. So happy to both have you here. These guys are Ben and Michael. They are co-workers with me at Hot Cars. So without me telling you all about them, I'll let them tell you all about themselves. Michael, how about you go first? Tell us a bit about yourself, then what you do, and we'll go from there.
All right. My name is Michael Van Runkel. I'm a car writer for hotcars.com. I also occasional YouTube contributor. That's kind of a new thing that I'm getting into. What I really am is I'm a screenwriter. I sold my first screenplay last year. It was supposed to be greenlit for production, and then the pandemic killed everything in Hollywood. So hoping that starts filming in August. In the meantime, that's sort of an on again, off again industry. So I write about cars to pay the bills. Always been into cars since I was a little kid. I got the disease from my dad, as so many of us did. The list of cars he never should have sold is probably in the hundreds at this point. So unfortunately, I have a long list going already myself. I currently drive a 98 Mitsubishi Montero, and I have a Porsche 914 project car. If you want to learn about those, just go on Hot Cars. I write about them constantly and make videos. But happy to be here. Thank you, Stephen, for the invite.
My pleasure. So first question for you, Michael, before we dive into Benny. You can pick one car that's your favorite car. What is it? You can only pick one.
No. It's like choosing your favorite color.
I know.
A silly question, but for me, it's no question at all. Lancia Stratos.
Oh, okay.
Completely unattainable. Right. I'll never have one, but I touched one once. Yeah.
Okay, so let's say you've got a Stratos in your garage. What is the one car you're going to pick to be a daily driver?
1998 Mitsubishi Montero. I have like my list of 5, and the Montero is one of them, and I've already got it. And I didn't even know when I got it that it was going to be so awesome. And now I'm just like going to keep it running forever. I just ran over 230,000 miles on it. It's got a check engine light on to celebrate. I've always in my mind been like, I want to be the guy with the one car that can do everything. And then I had that car and got the Montero somehow. And now I'm a 2-car solution guy. So the Montero will be the daily driver. And when the girlfriend needs to borrow that, hopefully the 914 will be running enough that I can do what little commuting I actually do.
I gotcha. All right. So Ben, tell us about yourself and what you do.
What's going on, everyone? My name's Benny Kirk. I'm a feature writer for hotcars.com. I've been at it since October 2020. It's been one heck of a ride. I am a journalism major. I graduated in May 2020 from the State University of New York at Purchase College. And I'm just about living the dream right now, talking about cars and getting paid for it. How could that be bad? What could be better?
So how did your love for cars develop, Benny?
Wow, that's a loaded question. Obviously, growing up as a kid in the late 2000s, everyone who knew anything about cars was watching Top Gear. And I feel like I got a lot of my personality when it comes to the car industry from Jeremy Clarkson. I know that's a pretty blanket statement for everyone who's a millennial, but honestly, It started for me with a game I played on a Pentium 4 Dell in my brother's room called Test Drive 5, and the intro scene to that. I saw the intro scene of that, and that was it. Lifelong obsession from a little video
Benny with
game.
all the deep cuts here.
Yeah.
Okay, so same questions to you. What's your all-time favorite car? You can only pick one.
Oh boy, man, that's a talk about
So like
loaded
all
questions.
the others are gonna get scrapped. You can only save one. What's it gonna be?
You know what? Put a gun to my head. I'll probably say Evo 10. Evo 10.
Whoa! I did not expect that.
Mitsubishi, all right.
What's up? Well, okay, so this can be a circular conversation about Mitsubishi today, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I could talk about Mitsubishi all day.
I already got some notes written down about Mitsubishi.
Okay, so why the Evo 10? I mean, the Lancia we got, like that makes all the sense in the world.
I mean, honest to God, I was not a big Japanese market guy at all until I wound up in a Japanese car. And just going from there, the Evo 10 has pretty much anything you could ever want in a car. It's fast, it handles well, it's got a big trunk, 4 seats. It can do anything you want it to. So it sort of negates the question of what would you need to do as your daily, as opposed to, just having one car.
So what's your Japanese car?
Hmm?
What is your Japanese car that got you into that?
My first car was a hand-me-down 2008 Acura MDX. And let me tell you, I did not like that car growing up, coming from a GMC Yukon Denali, which is basically you're driving in your living room, which is a car I grew up in. And it was smaller than the Denali, and I didn't like that until I put my foot down in it and like, wait, this has 300 horsepower? That changes things. Those J Series V6s, man, they're probably the most underrated engine in American cars right now. But what I'm driving right now is a 2017 Nissan Sentra with snow tires and 77,500 miles.
Nice.
So yeah.
With the transmission that you love.
Yeah, I love it so much. I'm on my third.
What?
Oh, yeah.
He
wrote an article about it, Michael. Yeah, he wrote an article about it for us.
Not only that, I wrote an article about it while I'm sitting in the Nissan dealer diagnosing my car and telling me that they can do it for free. So I've had approximately $9,000 worth of work done on my car for nothing.
Well, that's always the good thing. I always tell everyone who's got a relatively new car, whatever you get, just get the best warranty you can. Because if you can have a warranty, it's a lifesaver.
That really is some sound consumer advice, because just the warranties that you get on most new cars is really insufficient when you break down the numbers. It's almost, obviously I haven't been driving for that long, but it just seems to me that the warranties either cover only the powertrain now or cover specific parts of the car, but are just overall not sufficient enough for a holistic warranty that covers everything.
So I think that that's a beautiful segue to our general topic today about cars that are soaring versus those that are sinking. So I thought we'd talk about what it is about the companies that are doing well, that they're doing well. What is it that's making them so successful? And then on the other side of the coin, what is it about the car companies that are falling apart that is so detrimental to the way that they're doing business? So I'm sure most of us have some identical car companies here. So I'm going to let Ben start, and if we all have the same one, we can all just dive in on it. But
jump in and
Ben,
kick them all down.
Yeah, right. Ben, what's the first company that you think is on the rise that's doing really well, and what is it that you think that they're doing right?
I mean, it's pretty much the most obvious choice I could have picked, but without talking about it, you're kind of leaving out the 800-pound gorilla in the room, and that's got to be Tesla. Got to be Tesla. For a couple of different reasons. And it's not necessarily anything to do with how well they're built or the borderline unethical practices of their business. It's just their appeal. They have an appeal that every car company on the earth would kill for. It's trendy, it's popular, young people love them, and that's exactly what they need to do. That, luxury cars as a whole, they tend to be marketed towards older people. And make no mistake, Tesla is a luxury brand, but they're marketing it towards an entirely different subsection of society that, for the longest time, was either too young to buy a car of any kind, electric or not, or just was not interested in it. And they're at a crossroads now where they could potentially surpass the big three Detroit automakers in a lot of categories, if not outright create more revenue than they do. It's a question of what Elon Musk, like, where do his loyalties lie? Does he want to focus on SpaceX and, everything that entails? Or does he want to double down on refining quality, marketing towards the same people that have made their brand what it is? And that's really what I'm looking to see out of Tesla in 2021, 2022, because, I'm sure we'd all like to see them succeed, but, there's no guarantees in the auto industry. And really, it's going to be a sight to see. Whether they fail or not, it's movie material, absolutely.
Okay, so I think Michael had the same one. Am I right?
Yeah, I had Tesla on my list of companies that are sort of on the up and up. I think to a certain extent, a lot of people in the auto industry love to hate on Tesla because, as Ben mentioned, of the reliability issues and the fact that now a four-door sedan can go down and beat any Lamborghini off the line. The sound, everyone misses the roar of engines, but it is the future. You have to accept it. And as you said, I think the big question is, what's Elon going to do? Is he going to keep competing with Jeff Bezos and see who can fly to Mars first? Or are they actually going to, do the thing with electric cars? Competitors are starting to show up, though. We got Lucid, but that's also super luxurious, very expensive, six-figure stuff with the Porsche Taycan. I just went and saw the new Tesla Roadster, which, yeah, that's cool. It's super fast. It looks pretty good, I think. But again, $250,000. I really think the next news we're going to hear from Tesla after the Roadster sort of dies down is they're going to revamp their whole line, and they're going to make a Model 3 that's more affordable than it already is. I mean, the base ones are relatively affordable, but you start getting it into the dual motors and performance, and all of a sudden it's a $50,000 car. And again, we're in the luxury class. But I think you can't ignore them. And I think they're going to make a big move soon to expand after they've already gotten the brand awareness across the entire globe. Once they can, I think, upgrade their production facilities enough and have enough reliability to turn out something that's really cheap and actually can go 500 miles. I think that's the magic number for them. And I think it's coming soon.
That's interesting. So I totally agree with the mileage idea. Like, who needs a 600-mile range every day, all day? You know what I'm saying? Like, there comes a point where it's kind of diminishing returns, right? Yeah. It's like, why add the battery capacity? Because 2% of people are going to maybe use it sometimes, It's just yeah, I totally agree. And I think it's silly considering we all run around with this, like, we all have a certain amount of miles left on our fuel gauge anyway, right? So I think my only concern about Tesla, because I think overall I feel the same way you guys do. I think they're ahead of the game in many ways. But do you have any concerns over, like, how many times there's been overpromise and underdeliver? And kind of to Michael's point about other competitors, do you think that's going to leave a gap where GM or some other company can come in and take market share, maybe Ford,
Absolutely.
Well, yeah,
absolutely. And you're seeing it right now. You're seeing it right now with Volkswagen, with Kia, established brands that don't like to rock the boat unless they absolutely need to change. And this sort of concession by big conglomerate automakers that all electric, whether we like it or not, is the future. It says a lot because they could go on making gasoline powered automobiles and keep refining them and refine them up to the point where internal combustion can't get any more efficient, because you can make an argument that we're getting there. But I think it started with the Prius and the Honda Insight, well, because the Insight came first. A lot of people don't know that, but that was sort of the wedge that sort of got electric capabilities into the lexicon of Americans, especially. And just to see that, before our very eyes, we're seeing a revolution right now. Now, whether we stick to lithium ion batteries that are chargeable, or whether we go to some sort of hydrogen drive, that's yet to be seen. But with regards to Tesla, I think they have a very vested interest in keeping the lithium ion electric drive as the main way to go, as opposed to hydrogen. And I think that's something that we'll probably get into later on. I'm just curious what Michael has to say about that.
Yeah, I do have concerns about batteries. What's the sustainability of creating all these batteries for the cars? What kind of pollution are we going to be creating while building them? And then how do you recycle them? Like, I've asked around and I don't know what Tesla does with all their lease returns. Are they just parking them in the desert? I suspect that is what they're doing. Or maybe that's why he's building rockets, so we can launch them into space. But really, like, that's a serious concern. I've talked to some people in the hydrogen industry, and they're all in on saying batteries are really heavy, and hydrogen is literally the lightest element on the periodic table. The problem is you've got the Hindenburg problem, which is the H word that none of them want to talk about. And then just the infrastructure isn't there, but you can plug your Tesla in anywhere. As charging times come down, that's going to be the big one. My friend just bought a Model 3 in Utah and drove it back to LA immediately. Don't ask me why. And he said, it should have been a 12-hour trip if you're in a gas car, and it was a 24-hour trip just because of charging times. So the charging times are not what you think they are. They're worse. And they're not what they're advertised as anyways. They're worse. But he said while they were on the road, the car drove itself when he was reading a book or like answering emails. That's another trade-off. And the point is, these things are not for road trips. He was sort of doing that almost as an experiment. The point is for commuters. I live in an apartment. I can't plug in an electric car. The girlfriend had a Fiat 500, the electric version, for a while, and we had to get rid of it because there weren't enough chargers around even in Santa Monica where charging is free. She couldn't do it.
It's free, really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's a step that government can take to facilitate this whole revolution. But we bought that car, leased it, and Santa Monica had advertised plans to build a charging station at the end of our block, which would have been like, cool, free charging right there all the time. And they just never built it. And it was like, okay, well, we just got this car based on that. And there were some charging stations a few blocks away, but then that's like a hassle. And then she was getting stuck at places and blah, blah, blah. So we are in a revolution, but there's going to be little bumps along the way that we're seeing. The question is, how are these automakers, whether they're legacy brands with gasoline engines or they're new brands like Tesla and Lucid that are trying to say, this is something new. You want a new company that's not stuck in the past developing this for you. We're going to see whether they can prove to consumers that that's the way to go, or maybe there's someone else that's going to enter the game. Is another thing that I've been thinking about a lot lately, like someone that's going to not invest in the super expensive cars to start with, because we forget Tesla's been around for like, when did the first Roadster come out? Like 2007. So they started with really expensive stuff, and it was only recently that they got to the affordable cars for everyone. So is a Chinese company going to finally do it? It seems almost as reasonable as expecting an American company to make cheap cars in America.
Like one of those, what's it called? The Candy K something or other?
Oh, right. There's
You know what I'm talking
there's
about?
one called Candy, and then there's another I think called Cherry.
Yeah,
Ring a bell?
Familiar. Yeah.
Like,
Oh boy.
where is it? Yeah, Candy America.
And I mean,
The
credit to
Candy
Candy. I haven't looked too deeply into them, but it looks like a little tin can on wheels from the outside, but in the inside, it's very impressive.
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, we'll see if established automakers can make the conversion happen for themselves. They've got the capital to back their moves. The question is, can they have a strategy in place that's going to actually make it happen? I don't know if the Ford F-150 Lightning is the best first EV. I mean, well, okay, yeah, we've got the Escape and the Mustang, which is a joke, but I don't think the F-150 is going to be the truck that makes EVs work in America. It seems like a silly idea. It doesn't have the range. They haven't offered a single cab, so anyone who wants to do any actual work with it can't. It's a marketing ploy again from Ford, in the same way that using the Mustang name on the Mach-E was. So it's not looking good.
All right. So what's your second company, Michael?
My second company was on the trending upside was Kia / Hyundai.
Good choice.
That's first on mine. Yep.
Yeah, that was first on mine, but yeah, Tesla was third.
Well, go ahead.
They've come such a long way since the 90s when you started seeing the Kia Sportage, which was like such a pile on wheels. And the Elantra.
You remember the Spectra and
but they got into it sort of from that perspective of let's make something super cheap, super affordable, and just get them out there and get our name going and have, as I always bring it back to, a solid warranty. And now we're 25, 30 years on almost, and they're doing a really good job. They're sort of doing, in my mind, like what Lexus did for the Japanese brands in the mid 90s with the LX 400, which was like,
yeah,
okay,
right.
We've built some cool cars that are commuters. Now let's go upscale and let's show what we can do. And they've poached all the designers from Germany. I think, in my mind, especially Kia's designs are probably my favorite on the market right now. Hyundai is a little bit swoopier, but I mean they're very similar. I think Kia just came out with the Telluride SUV, which I think is just like a simple 7-seater family SUV that's not atrocious looking like most things on the market these days. They've spun off Genesis as to like this second brand. Is that going to be both Kia and Hyundai? I don't know, but my uncle has one and it is so nice. My uncle also had an LS 400 in the 90s, so he's got his eye on it. He's cool.
That's awesome.
They got the Stinger GT, which is our boss drives one and he loves it. It's a little big for me. I think that what they need to do next is make a small, simple sports car, a la the Miata or the BRZ FRS 86, whatever Toyota and Subaru are going to call it next. And I think that could really be a solid way to prove that like simple, fun cars are still viable. They might have to do that and make it electric, bringing it back to the Tesla conversation. But from a warranty standpoint and a styling standpoint, and I drove a Kia Optima as a rental. Maybe last year I went to a wedding and rented it for a few days, and it was a really nice car. It was like, I was blown away. I had been in a Sportage way back when, and they've come a long way.
I was two different car companies.
Yeah. Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I said they were like two totally different car companies, I bet.
Entirely. That thing, it was a rental Optima and it had like wood grain on the dash. What's going on? And it was fast. I mean, if we had the whole fam there and they all fit just fine, looked good. Didn't get to have it long enough to see what the fuel economy was like, but I'm sure it was very good. We were in New Orleans, so the roads are like absolute garbage there because of all the swamp and rain and everything. And it just, with a smooth driver. I mean, when the girlfriend was getting rid of the Fiat 500e, I was pushing her towards a Kia, and she eventually did not go in that direction because she never listens to me. But I think she should have.
What do you think, Ben?
To tell you the truth, if you told me 15 years ago that we were going to be talking about Kia and those types of companies, Kia and Hyundai together in this kind of regard, I would have been like, you're out of your mind. And everyone today is all about, the USDM, the JDM. Let's talk about KDM in America, because that's the future. Is this sort of coexistence between all different makers from around the world. And now, Kia's been here for a while. They've been here in some form or another since the late 80s, but they've been pretty much complete jokes up until what, like 2015, something like that, the middle of the 2010s. And to see where they've come from, I mean, I recall a Top Gear episode way back when with all types of cars from the Pacific Rim, and you would have thunk leaving that episode that there's no way they could ever improve on that. It's just so blanket terrible. And to see the regard that people hold for them now with the Genesis brand especially, because luxury divisions are notoriously difficult to get into. And that's why, only Lexus and Acura and, maybe Infiniti have sort of branched off in the last 30 to 40 years. And to see Genesis not only holding their own, but thriving says so much, not only about the decrease in quality that you've seen from American manufacturers, but like an equal and opposite reaction in the other direction with KDM cars. And, I can't say that no one foresaw that happening, but it's safe to say very few people did. And it's almost like we're living in the Twilight Zone a little bit, especially if anyone was even around a Kia Rio back in the day.
Rio. Yeah, that's a blast from the past. That's a good one.
That is. So I couldn't agree more. They were the first one on my list too, because so having driven stuff like the Veloster N, which is incredible. I like Genesis too. I've driven the G70, I think it was, and that was really good, like really impressive. And then you look at the new brand, the Ioniq, going into the EV field again. Like, I could not agree with everything that you guys are saying more. The designs, I think, are super bold. Like, you look at like the new Sonata with that weird light pattern that goes up the hood. Like, they're just doing stuff that no one else is willing to do, in my opinion. Like the Stinger GT is a great example of that. Like, what other fairly inexpensive rear-wheel drive car is 350 horsepower or whatever it is right now? Like, it really doesn't exist. And if it does, it's in the form of like a Dodge Charger that's sitting on a 20-year-old platform, So
it's a car that American manufacturers could make very easily, but they choose not to. For what reason?
Exactly.
We're not auto executives. We don't know. We can make educated guesses. It's not the kind of market they're trying to get into. They're trying to appeal to more mass market stuff. You can get all kinds of jargon like that. But if let's just take that Kia Stinger, we take the Kia badge off, put a Chevrolet badge on it, put Chevelle on the back. You have a sales boomer right there. And the fact that they're just letting Kia, they're letting KDM come in there and take that market pretty much unopposed says a lot about where their priorities are right now.
Right. I think in general, we're seeing most American manufacturers push all their capital into trucks and SUVs, right? I mean, that's where Ford's going. That's pretty much where Chevy's going. Even Dodge with like the Ram brand. Think about how innovative Ram is right now compared to how innovative Dodge and Chrysler are right now.
It's night and day.
Yeah.
Night and day.
Well, I wonder why they spun off the Ram brand entirely. I liked the idea of the Dodge Ram. And I don't know. Maybe
I did too.
Pick the trucks, but that was
I thought once SRT went back to Dodge, I was like, oh, okay, they'll bring the trucks back. Everything will be one big happy family again. Nope.
Yeah.
So Michael, what's your first sinking brand? What's the first brand that you're like, they're not going to be around for very long?
We'll start strong. I don't think that they won't be around for very long. I hope, I pray that they can get it back. But Mitsubishi was going to be first on my list.
It's unfortunate, but I'd have to agree with you on that.
Yeah, it's real bad. It's a bad situation for them. I mean, I have my Montero, which I will like scream to everyone is the best truck of all time. All the Lancer Evos back in the day, the Galant VR4, the 3000 GT, they had their heyday, and then the Lancer came up, and the Pajero Evo dominated all kinds of Dakar races for 20 years or something. And then all of a sudden we've got the Outlander, which is like the world's crappiest crossover, and that is saying something. It's really hard to do. And I don't know what's going on. It blows my mind. I looked at their like sales document projections for 2022 they just released sort of surreptitiously, and it was like they're doubling down. They're going to try and sell more Outlanders. I think maybe part of it might be just that we only get a certain portion of what they build here in America, and they're making money around the world selling body on frame small pickup trucks, which is what the Montero is. It's a third world truck that they happen to ship here and try and beat the Land Cruiser at because they were in the prime of their careers. But here in America, they're not selling anything that anybody wants, unfortunately. Now, in that same sort of forecast document, they did announce they're reviving rally art, and they're going to have a new Pajero, which obviously will never come to America, but that could lead to a new Montero in America, especially if the community here keeps thriving. So hopefully they can find the magic again. But at the moment, it's hard to see a way out other than like, let's go rally racing again and see if that excitement. I mean, it's sort of the same thing like that we all saw in Ford v Ferrari. It was let's go racing and like make something exciting, and then that changes the entire ethos of a brand. And maybe Mitsubishi can do that again. Otherwise, we have to take into consideration that they're just sitting there making money off of every inline four engine sold on the entire planet. And I just wonder if they're just like, whatever, we made the balance shaft, just give us our checks, please. Like they don't need to do it. They literally don't. They're just like, every brand on the planet pays us. So what do we need to make good cars for?
What do you think, Benny?
That comes to mind.
I mean,
that's
where
a
do
good
we
point,
begin?
though. That's a great point. Yeah.
Where do we begin with Mitsubishi? I mean, it's sort of like an understated thing that like Mitsubishi has been a factor in the American market for so long now. They were partnered with Chrysler in the 80s, and it's largely the work of Mitsubishi that, obviously with the collaborations of Lee Iacocca and, taking a bunch of Mitsubishi parts, putting them into a Chrysler body and almost making almost like a Taco Bell menu type of thing where all these types of different cars, have the same underpinnings and they have the same engine. That's the reason Chrysler is here today, because they wouldn't have survived without Mitsubishi. And, obviously Michael brought up, all of their amazing performance cars from the 90s. And then into the 2000s, you start to see things starting to really get out of control. And I think it just can't be understated how big of a detriment getting into the whole Renault, Nissan, Carlos Ghosn operated circus show, for lack of a better term. We tend to talk about how much it affects Nissan, and rightly so. I mean, Nissan is not much better in terms of projected future performance. And Mitsubishi suffered even more. I mean, you look at their lineup. I mean, granted that the all electric Outlander is actually one of the higher selling electric crossovers in America right now. But you look at everything else they have. I mean, the Mirage. I mean, me personally, I really like the Mirage because I'm a knucklehead. But you know, to go from the Evo 10 being your passenger car, let's say, in the lineup to the Mirage and nothing else, it proves to me that either their ambition has gone down as they get profits from their other endeavors, because Mitsubishi's they don't just make cars, they make all kinds of things, and they used to make fighter aircraft back in the day. So to say that Mitsubishi has their focuses on the American car market, it's not true. It's just not true at all. And maybe they see their American car division as expendable. It certainly would look that way. And to get involved with Carlos Ghosn was probably the worst thing they could have possibly done. And hey, they might have had no idea what they were getting themselves into, because when Renault Nissan acquired Mitsubishi, Carlos Ghosn was one of the most respected, praised, and successful auto executives in the world. It wasn't until well afterwards that he had to be smuggled out of Japan in a piano crate, and little did anyone know what was lying beneath the surface. How much of that did Mitsubishi know? Well, we might never know, but the effects are as plain to see as anything else.
So Michael, do you think it's just that lack of interest that's spurring their deterioration here in the States?
It could very well be. They make AC machines that are viewed as the best splitters you can buy on the market. So,
right.
What's the profit margin on one of those versus the profit margin on a commuter car these days? Honestly, it's probably fairly similar. You make
right.
a tiny amount of money compared to how many people in the world need an AC machine as the world heats up. Maybe they're looking at global warming and saying, hey, the cars are the problem. Let's make air conditioners.
Man, that's a good point. I never really thought about it. It really, but that lack of interest, I think, is really key. I mean, I think kind of the perfect point is the Eclipse Cross, right?
Oh,
so
God.
they had this halo car that like everybody loved and everybody thought was great. And when you saw one, you knew that was a Mitsubishi. And they were like, oh, that name doesn't matter. Let's just put it on this thing over here. Maybe people will buy it.
Yeah.
Well, if the Eclipse Cross was a halfway decent car, maybe people would give it a little bit of slack. But I haven't driven one personally, but I've seen plenty of them, and they look pretty milquetoast, honestly.
Nice. Milk toast.
It's a nice SAT word for you.
Yeah.
So Benny, what's your first car company that's flopping tremendously?
As a red-blooded American, I don't see how we could look at anything other than Chrysler. I mean, it's for car journalists, and especially car journalists who tend to look at the, I mean, not the bad side of things, but just like the humorous failures, and the many of them that are throughout the car industry. Chrysler is just the gift that keeps on giving. They've been on the verge of bankruptcy 3 or 4 times now
for the last years.
Yeah.
And a lot of people will give this, that, and the other answer as to why Chrysler is in the position they're in right now. And I have my 2 cents. Whether or not this is true, really, I can't really say. But my perception is Chrysler is just completely missing the mark in terms of who they should be selling cars to. I mean, the Hellcat is great in a vacuum. In a society where you don't need to sell cars to make a living, the Hellcat's the greatest thing that ever existed. But if you're making the Hellcat while simultaneously not selling any cars, small affordable cars that people want to buy, that's the issue. Is you're not going to buy a Chrysler 200 if you have any self-respect, or any any Chrysler
If you're not
manufactured
Enterprise
low-end
Rent a
car.
Car.
Yeah.
And like I said, they needed the help of Mitsubishi in the 80s to finally make small, affordable cars that Americans wanted to buy. And it seems to me like it goes through cycles of Chrysler will try and innovate using outside help. They'll improve a little bit gradually, and then they'll rest on their laurels. And it comes right back down again. And it's been a very cyclical thing. It's almost as if, Chrysler hasn't learned anything after being bailed out by the government, not once, but twice. And in fact, the only reason that Chrysler was able to pay off their government loans back in the 80s was because of the help from Mitsubishi. And now that they're under this massive umbrella conglomerate called Stellantis,
Yes.
it could be the best thing in the world for Chrysler. It could be the death of Chrysler. I think the general consensus among performance car enthusiasts is that that Stellantis is going to come along and put their big Frenchy hands all over the Hellcat and all that, and they're going to make everything all electric, and they're going to make everything really boring, and that could be the case, but we just don't know. I mean, Stellantis has only been together for what, 6.5 months ish, or something like that. So it's going to be really interesting to see what they're going to do with Chrysler. They could neglect it and they could keep going on, and they could, sell it off to greener pastures. I hope they don't do that. But frankly, where do you go from here? You on one hand, you're in the market selling, the last generations of the Hemi V8s, and that's a great thing. It's a great cornerstone for your brand to launch off of. But at the end of the day, that's still not going to be selling anyone affordable cars that people want to buy. And I think that's where Chrysler's probably, I don't see any proof that they're going to change that direction. I'm curious to see what you have to say, Michael.
Oh, 100% agree. I mean, I think it's like they're building a bunch of Hemi-powered V8 everythings, SUVs, sedans, coupes, trucks. And it's like, I look at it when clothing brands have stores on like Rodeo Drive, they're spending $100,000 a month on rent, and they're not really selling very much, but it's a marketing exercise. Because how many headlines does each new Hellcat powered XYZ earn? But then there's nothing to back that up. Like with a clothing brand on Rodeo Drive, then you go on their website and people are willing to spend money when they've got everything 60% on sale. But there's nothing from Chrysler that is like, oh, I got enticed in by the new Charger, but I'll do a slight pivot to save 10 grand. And really, I don't need 4 MPGs. I really want 25. So,
Even 30.
Yeah, maybe something reasonable that is somewhat inspired, but not a Hemi.
Mm-hmm.
Do they have it in them? I don't know. The Stellantis thing is like very confusing. Why would you do that? Stellantis is like an evil corporation from Blade Runner to me, but it's happening, so we just get to witness.
So here's a question. When was the last time that Chrysler, not Dodge, Chrysler, just Chrysler, innovated? What was the last innovative thing that Chrysler did on their own?
I got you.
Go for it.
Grand Caravan.
Yep.
The original mini.
Yep. And when was that? 88, 86?
Something like that. 84, I think, was the first one.
So that's my kicker, right? So like, I'll parse them out a little bit, right? So like, I appreciate Dodge. Like, Dodge always seems like the black sheep of the family, right? Like they do stupid, silly, crazy stuff, like putting a Hellcat motor in the Durango, and like I love that. That's great, and I think that Dodge specifically has hit on this idea that, oh, we can keep these old Mercedes platforms around. They continue to work fine. American drivers don't super care that they're not updated. We'll just update the body and the tech, right? And they continue to sell Challengers and Chargers all day long, no big deal. But you look at Chrysler, and Chrysler makes me think that they have decided that in 10 years, Chrysler is going to just leave. We're just going to forget that Chrysler's a brand because the 200 is gone. And the 300 was awesome when it was brand new, right? But like, it's not gathering any headlines anytime soon, right? And the Town and Country's gone, so the Pacifica has taken over. But it'd be real easy to make the Pacifica just some sort of a Dodge product, right?
Put a Hellcat in it.
Put a Hellcat in the Pacifica.
Hell yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. I think or at least in my vision, I think Chrysler's already dead. I really do. I think Chrysler's probably gone. They've already decided that 5 years, 10 years down the road, Chrysler's just going to go away. And they're going to move Pacifica development, and maybe they'll do some sort of a 300 something, but like, why? The Charger sells fine. It's the exact same thing. And I think you're both totally right. I can't imagine them coming back. Where I can see like a path for Mitsubishi to get it figured out if they want to, I can't see Chrysler doing that unless they completely change their brand identity, you know?
That's hard to do, especially in a big three American automaker. And I got to tell you, there's probably a lot of old timers out there that probably think Chrysler going away forever is 40, 50 years overdue in terms of the lack of quality that they've applied to their passenger cars for so long. And, you know, all things considered, they've really gotten away with it scot-free up until now. And I mean, late 80s, late 2000s are both periods where Chrysler could have poofed away, and they didn't, because there was a concerted effort by governments to prevent that from happening. And I mean, I'm not a politician, but, you know, if I were, I would probably be pretty annoyed with Chrysler right now in terms of, you know, how much money have they been given over the last 30, 40 years, and how many times have they just thrown it right back in the government's face by not innovating, not giving Americans small consumer cars that they want to buy. It's like they know exactly what they have to do, but for one reason or another, they just haven't. And there's the stereotype of, oh, that's what happens when you put accountants in charge of car companies. That may very well be the case with Chrysler, but, you know, who knows what's going to become of them, and it doesn't look good right now at all.
Right. So we'll go back the other direction now. Michael, what's your second up and coming car company?
Well,
or I should say third at this point.
Yeah, because we already did Tesla. And
everybody agrees on Tesla, and yeah.
Is that so? Maybe this is fourth, or Genesis, so now we're at fifth. But yeah, no, it's an absurd one. But I said Porsche because I was really struggling. I'm pretty down on most car companies these days. I decided Porsche because of just a few reasons. Like, obviously, the bad news with Porsche is that the new 911 Targa 4S weighs like 4,000 pounds. So you've got a really heavy 911. That's no good. But they released the Taycan, and at first I was pretty skeptical. They were a little late to the parade. I expected them to be a faster alternative to Tesla. And the Taycan is also very expensive, but Porsches have historically always been expensive. The good news is I think the Cayenne is still okay. I'm actually kind of getting into like the late 2000s Cayennes for whatever reason. They have front and rear disconnecting sway bars, I just found out, which is pretty cool. But the big reason I am into Porsche right now is the way that the Taycan sounds, the fact that it uses a 2-speed transmission and has long range. The Cayman GT4 is real cool. And the next generation Boxster and Cayman are going to be small, lightweight electric sports cars. And, you know, if we were to wrap up this conversation now, I'd say that the general consensus is electric is the future. these companies need to figure out how to make a small economy car that people actually want to buy. And there's a dearth of small lightweight sports cars, and hopefully Porsche can combine that all. Now, of course, for Porsche, that electric sports car is probably going to cost $60,000, which is a sad story. But maybe they'll come out with something cheaper. Now that the Boxster Cayman has become electric, they'll have to come out with a new entry-level sports car. So I think it's another thing where there's going to be something big from Porsche soon, once the Taycan hype fades away. I'm impressed by the Cayenne E hybrid, which is like a hybrid SUV that's really, really stupid fast. I don't know, the interiors are doing pretty well. They had a low point for interiors in like the late 2000s, early teens, but I don't know. I'm a Porsche guy also, so totally biased, and I can admit it for this thing, but this really came about because I was struggling to think of other car companies that I'm feeling particularly positive about these days, which is sad for an automotive journalist, but there you have it.
I like that choice. That's one of the ones that I was teetering on when I was writing down mine as well. What do you think, Benny?
I mean, when it comes to Porsche, they could have done a number of different things going into this decade, even the 21st century as a whole. I mean, up until then, they were known for sports cars, gasoline powered, fun driving sports cars, and they could have continued on developing down that road if they wanted to, and I don't think anyone would have faulted them for it. But the fact that they decided to innovate in so many different ways with electric vehicles, with hybrid drives, shows that no one is immune from the passage of technological advancement. And honestly, I think Porsche's better off as a whole for going with the trend as opposed to, sticking their head in the sand and saying, oh, no, we're a European gasoline sports car manufacturer, and if you don't like that, you can stick it. Which
we're going to circle back to that idea in a minute, but go ahead, Benny.
I mean, if Ferrari and Lamborghini are deviating towards that, then at that point, Porsche, their main competitor, has no excuse. And I think they were really smart to get ahead of the curve on that. And the results with the Taycan are frankly astonishing. I don't think anyone would have anticipated that there would have been this level of passion and this level of driving experience with an electric car. I mean, yeah, with Tesla, we know they're crazy fast in a straight line, and they'll gap any supercar. But in terms of a holistic driving experience, I mean, I've never driven a Tesla. I can only base my opinions off of what I've heard other people who have driven Teslas, and they're not the most involved driving experience. Electric power steering is very limiting in that aspect. But Porsche, on the other hand, they really doubled down on maintaining that driving experience that's been known to that brand for 100 years now. And that balance of driving experience and technology, it's so easy. It's like balancing on a trapeze. It's so easy to fall over. And the Taycan specifically it's passed with flying colors, and I can't wait to see how that trickles down to the Cayenne, the Macan, and their sports cars. Their sports cars are going to benefit tremendously from technological advancements from the Taycan. That's what's really exciting here, is eventually that's going to trickle down to the 911. And yeah, it's a big, heavy car, but with enough electric batteries, we've seen time and time again that could be a non-factor.
It's happening this generation. The 992 already has room for batteries and a little unit between the transmission and engine to give it hybrid drive. They're just waiting till a mid-generation facelift to do it. So you're going to get your wish, but you also definitely need to drive a Tesla, dude.
Yeah,
I'd love to.
Yeah,
I'd absolutely love to.
I was going to say about that experience. So I've never driven them back to back. Having driven a few different Teslas, I think it kind of influences my pick for the next brand that's fallen apart or is going to fall apart. But they are very clinical. They're still good. I still enjoy driving them. Like if I could afford one, I'd have one. And I think they can be a lot of fun, but at least a bone stock Tesla has enough body roll that it's a little annoying when you really push it. And a Taycan is a different animal. Like, it's really weird to me, having driven enough Teslas, to be like, oh, okay, this is how the steering feels in an electric car. And I've driven like a Leaf and a Kona and a bunch of those, and a lot of them feel really similar. And then the Porsche is different, and I don't know how they manage that. Like the engineering gymnastics that they had to do to put that feeling into the way that the car reacts to your inputs is like an artisan approach to it that is very difficult to comprehend, for me at least. Because essentially all the parts are similar. It's just the way that they're programming it. It's the way that they're programming the feedback to happen. So yeah, I think Porsche's doing fantastic. They need to continue to do what they're doing, and obviously electrification is the future, it seems like, for everybody. But that brings me to, and we'll wrap up pretty soon, that brings me to my pick for the company that's falling apart, or is going to, and that's Lamborghini.
I knew it.
I want to hear this.
So here's my thinking, and I super love Lamborghini, literally my favorite car company ever. If I could have anything, it'd be a Diablo. I just love them to death. So here's the thing. So we know they're going all electric too, right? Like that's what they came out and said. We're going to ultimately end up going all electric. They haven't announced any plans to continue the V12 after whatever's next, right?
Yeah, it's going to be the last one, and then there's like, oh, but we're going to make a special edition of that.
Oh yeah, that's like Pagani with the Zonda.
I was going to say, this isn't like, Zonda.
Oh, yeah. So here's the kicker. If they really do that, though, if they really get rid of the V12 and they get rid of the V10, they're an all-electric supercar company like Rimac. Why? Like, what's the impetus for spending $500,000 or $1 million on this thing, right? Like, surely it's going to look wacky, right? It's going to look like a Lamborghini, and it's going to have all the right styling cues and whatever else. But when you 10 years from now, every car company, major car company, is going to have a car that does 0 to 60 in 3 seconds, right? If it's electric, it's going to be able to do that. And so what's the impetus to spend $500,000 on a car that looks wacky, right, but is no faster than a Chevy whatever or a Ford whatchamacallit, right? Like is it just the exclusivity? Because I cannot imagine a flagship Lamborghini that doesn't have that noise behind the driver.
Well, it still could. You put some loudspeakers on it.
Oh, that is exactly what a Lamborghini driver would do today.
Oh, yeah. Big time. Well, living in LA, I mean, it's kind of a joke. There's like Lamborghinis and McLarens and Ferraris everywhere. They kill my eardrums when I'm out on the bike. And yeah, it's a joke because they make that much noise when they're in stop and go traffic. And right. Yes, it is the image. Yes, it is the exclusivity. And yes, it is saying, I just spent $1 million on this car. And the tiny fraction of Lamborghini owners who actually drive a Lamborghini how it's supposed to be driven probably won't be buying a Lamborghini. I think you're correct.
Not at all. I mean, there's a lot of buzzwords that get thrown around when you talk about supercars, especially Italian supercars, passion, soul, like a lot of marketing jargon. But specifically with supercars, it's the main reason behind why you would buy a Lamborghini or a Lancia or any of the innumerable Italian sports car makers that, are great to drive but fall apart. And with regards to Lamborghini, the V12 has been their flagship, God, since the late 60s. And to just deviate away from a standard that's brought them so much success, I mean, I don't see how that could be anything but a failure. When you essentially neutering a known standard, which, I mean, you could even make the argument that the Urus, the SUV, was a bridge too far for some people.
Oh, there are so many of those in LA. They are, you see more of those than you do Cayennes and Audi SQ8s or whatever. They are like, I live in Santa Monica, but I live in like the cheap, relatively poor section of Santa Monica, and there are like 4 Uruses within like 3 blocks of my apartment. And I'm like, okay, so you're renting an apartment for $3,000 a month and your lease on your Lambo is 4 times that. Okay.
So this is an interesting point that I thought a little bit about, but I really wanted to get both of your perspectives, considering both of you will see more of these than I will here. I wonder if you're right, Michael. I wonder if it's really just going to be a statement about wealth. And Lamborghini knows that, and that's why we see them pivoting towards like fragrances and things like that. Yeah. There's a Lamborghini fragrance. It's a diffuser they just released like last week.
Oh, wow. It smells, you put that on so it covers up the sound of your car burning down behind you.
But so that's what I wonder. I really wonder that, like what happens, I really think in terms of a well-respected automotive enthusiast brand, I don't know how you survive without what's been the heart of the brand, I think, for 70 years, something like that now.
That's a good question. It is a very good question. That's what people get paid the big bucks. That's why they brought in the guy from Bugatti. Brought back the guy from Bugatti. That's why they're in talks.
So what's funny about that guy is before he left, someone asked him about electrification. This is like 6-7 years ago. You can look it up. They're like, are you guys talking about doing electric? What are you going to do? And he's like, never. He's like, we will go turbo before we go to electric. And then he comes back and he's like, no turbo. We go electric.
Yeah, well, you gotta be willing to change your mind, but I would not envy his job at the moment. Like he's got some hard choices to make, and it's gonna be some real rolls of the dice.
I thought it was funny that as soon as he said that, Lamborghini was like, oh, you want to go turbo? Go to Bugatti. Yeah. You can have 4 of them per car. Yeah. Oh, my goodness. Well, I think you said it best, Michael. You wouldn't envy that guy's job, and he's definitely got a lot of interesting choices that he's got to make. But this has been fun. So I think in terms of car companies that we think are doing well, they're innovative, they're utilizing technology to the best of their abilities, and for the ones that are failing, they sell about 2 or 3 cars here total right now.
Yep. Yeah, that sums it up pretty well. Yeah, I think a lot of it is the difference between what looks good in a television or online commercial and what you can actually sell on a dealer floor. We haven't talked about Subaru, which is sort of this little outlier, still making gasoline powered flat 4 engines. I just drove a Forester and an Outback last week, and they were like pretty nice cars. They're the essence of milk toast. Right. They're real good at it.
Excellent.
So that's like, I don't know. There are the brands that are pushing it and moving everything forward, but there are the ones who are going to keep doing the same thing. And how's Lamborghini gonna split that gap if they're not gonna keep doing the same thing? I don't know. What does it mean for enthusiasts with autonomy coming, electric cars coming? We are in a revolutionary phase right now, and it's exciting, but also sort of cringeworthy at the same time, as we're gonna probably see brands failing because they just can't do it. And I think we're going to see brands succeeding that don't even exist yet. We were talking about all these brands and I was like, okay, but who's on the horizon that we haven't even, who's going to be the disruptors? And like, we mentioned Lucid, we mentioned, I thought it was Rimac. Is it Remats?
I think it's Rimac.
Rimac?
It's either Remats or Rimac.
Yeah.
So we've all called it Rimac forever, right? Because it's the way it looks. But the guy, it's just like it's like Porsche versus Porsche.
Yeah.
So it's if I remember right, the guy's Croatian.
Yeah.
And he pronounces it. He's come out now and said it's Remats.
All right then.
I actually prefer that. I think it gives it a nice little like mystique to it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to condemn anybody for saying it however they want to say it. So.
That's what we're going to do here in America. Sorry, guy.
We all know what we're talking about when we say it.
Yes. Yeah. The rabbit, not the trap.
There we go.
And then I also wanted to bring up Canoe, which is a startup here in LA.
Yep.
They're doing electric platforms. They've got their van, but really they're going to be a platform manufacturer. And so that's sort of, I mean, it sounds like it's straight out of the TV show Silicon Valley, but that's just like a real good pivot. We're not even a car maker anymore. We're a platform maker. You go ahead and make your own car. We're just going to build a great drivetrain.
And then what if we go back to coach builders?
Yeah, right? Or we can all just 3D print something that we designed on our computer and put it on there. And like, it's going to drive itself. So the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration doesn't care if it's safe or not, because it's never going to get in an accident. Just make sure that you have the right radar on it and you can drive anything. So, I mean, now we're just daydreaming, but it's the point is everything's changing. And will the auto industry as we know it as a whole even be the same after electrification, which is the inevitable destination that we all seem to agree is on the way?
Right. That's a good point. What about you, Ben? What are your what else did you have in the pipeline?
Honestly, I was curious to see what Michael had to say about all of that, and I wish I had more to add on to that, but I think the only thing I can add really is the days of the user-driven car, it seems like, I mean, that it could be propaganda, for all we know from the media, but are we really destined for self-driving cars being the norm and the standard? I mean, me personally, my biggest red flags when it comes to self-driving cars is how are you going to have self-driving cars and normal driven cars in same lanes of traffic, at the same highway speeds? It just, I mean, obviously that's what self-driving car manufacturers are trying to figure out. And there's a company in Pittsburgh called, I think it's Argo, ARGO. And that's what their plan is to do right now, is to make the software that makes that possible. And if we've learned absolutely nothing else, we've learned that engineers can make pretty much anything possible. We doubt them, we downplay them, we talk down to them, when we browbeat them, and at the end of the day, they just come out innovating, and who knows where it's going to end up, because it's a vision in their head, not ours. As much as we, as automotive journalists, think we know everything, I mean, it's mostly in the control of the engineers, and it's going to be a heck of a time seeing what they come out with, because I remember, I believe it was James May who was talking to Jay Leno about how electric cars are going to do for gasoline engines what gasoline engines did for the horse. Gasoline engines took the horse and removed them from their drudgery of having to pull people around and pull stuff around. And is there going to be a day one day where gasoline powered cars are just this like niche thing driven by enthusiasts who love them and, get to drive them on, their own self-contained tracks just to have fun? That doesn't sound like a bad world to me.
I always like to think that maybe because the robots are driving the cars and they're so good at keeping everyone safe, that when there are enough autonomous driving cars on the road, then I can drive my car however I want, and the cars will part like the Red Sea, and I can just fly on by.
That's such a beautiful thought. I'd never considered that. That's a great point, Michael.
Because they have to look out for me as I'm coming through, or they'll just like click a red button and then I get overrided, and I'm now joining the march onward. Like, I don't know, Minority Report always comes to mind in my mind.
Sounds terrifying. All right, so any final thoughts, Michael?
No, I think I ranted on long enough on my last final thoughts wrap up. Thank you very much.
Anything from you, Benny?
Honestly, this has been absolutely fantastic, and I hope we get to do it again because I could go on and on and on.
Yeah. Thank you, Stephen, for putting this together. This was definitely fun.
Hey, my pleasure. I'm glad your internet worked out this whole time. Before we go, anything you want to plug that you're working on right now, Michael, or anything that you have upcoming?
Well, I've got 7 interviews that I've done that I need to write up. Some of them are pretty cool. I just interviewed Frank Stevenson, which is another subject that we could definitely talk about ad infinitum. He's working on electric vertical takeoff and landing machines now. This is the guy, he designed the X5, the Ford Cosworth, the Escort Cosworth rear wing, the revived Mini Cooper, the revived Fiat 500, the McLaren P1. He's like as high up in the design world as it can be. And I spent an hour this morning talking to him about everything that we just talked about. Like, the future is electrification. He's sick of designing hypercars. He wants to build something that will actually help everyone. And so he's working on electric vertical takeoff and landing, and he thinks that's the future of mobility. So keep an eye out for that interview. He's a really funny guy. Other than that, just, please watch my videos. I try to make them pretty good.
Very cool, very cool. And all that stuff is on Hot Cars and their YouTube channel, which we'll link down below as well. What about you, Ben? Anything you want to plug? Anything flight related you want to plug that you've done recently that was great?
I mean, follow me on hotcars.com, hotcars.com/Benny Kirk. I do all kinds of different articles regarding anything with an engine, really. My biggest the most fun thing that I've done recently is I went out to a place called Calverton, New York, which is a place out on Long Island, and there is a public park in which sits an F-14 fighter jet just sitting there rotting. And I went out there and took pictures of it, and it was just absolutely a blast to do. And I would love to do more stuff like that in the future. Just, go out and engage with people and, take pictures and do things like that. That's what I live to do. That's my passion. And I really hope you guys enjoy that kind of stuff because I enjoy making it.
Definitely.
And just to clarify, Benny wrote up a whole article. He didn't just walk out and take pictures. Just to clarify, it's a really good article. He goes into some depth into that whole situation there. So
Cool.
Very cool stuff. Thank you guys for joining me, for spending this time doing this. It's been a real pleasure. And like Benny said, I'm sure at some point we can get together and do it again and dive into some more of these different topics. Next time we'll put it on Michael to decide what we talk about. So. All right. Thanks, guys.
Later.
And that's episode 3. I want to thank Michael and Benny for coming on and joining me. Both of these guys have been good friends and inspirations in many ways for the great writing and work that they do. Join us next week for another episode of the Drive with Passion podcast. Between now and then, be sure to keep an eye on the channel because something very special is hopefully coming this weekend. Have a great day.